The ropes bit into Molly Brennan's wrists so deep she could no longer feel her fingers, and in the suffocating darkness of the abandoned mine shaft where they had thrown her, she understood with absolute clarity that no one was coming to save her. The three men who had taken her from the stagecoach 5 days ago had made it abundantly clear that her father, the wealthy railroad magnate from Boston, would pay handsomely for her return. But what they did not know was that her father had disowned her 6 months prior, when she refused to marry his business partner, a man 3 times her age with hands that wandered and breath that reeked of whiskey and cruelty. Molly was 22 years old, and she had come to Arizona Territory in the spring of 1884 with nothing but a carpet bag and the stubborn determination that had always driven her father to distraction. She had taken a position as a schoolteacher in Coolidge, a dusty little town that sat between the Gila River and absolutely nowhere, where the summer heat could kill a man and the winters were deceptively cold. For 4 glorious months, she had taught reading and arithmetic to children whose faces lit up with understanding, and she had felt purpose singing through her veins like cool water. Then the Garrett brothers had spotted her boarding the stagecoach to Casa Grande to purchase supplies, and everything had shattered. The eldest brother, Frank, was the one who checked on her, bringing stale bread and lukewarm water twice a day. He had a scar that ran from his left eye to his jaw, and he never met her gaze directly. The middle brother, Charlie, was the cruel one who enjoyed her fear, who would stand at the entrance to the mine shaft and describe in vivid detail what they would do to her if the ransom did not arrive. The youngest, Pete, barely looked old enough to shave, and sometimes Molly caught something like regret flickering across his sunburned face. On the 6th day, Charlie descended into the mine shaft with a telegram in his hand and murder in his eyes. "Your daddy says he does not have a daughter," Charlie spat, crumpling the paper and throwing it at her feet. "Says we can keep you or kill you makes no difference to him." Molly's heart plummeted, but she kept her chin high. "Then you might as well let me go. I am worthless to you." Charlie's laugh was ugly. "Oh, we will find some use for you yet. There are plenty of men in Mexico who pay good money for pretty American girls." He left her in the darkness, and Molly finally allowed the tears to come. She wept for the life she had tried to build, for the children who would wonder where their teacher had gone, for the small room above the general store that had been the first place that ever truly felt like home. She wept until she had no tears left, and then she began to pray. Nathan Irving had been tracking the Garrett brothers for 8 days. He was a bounty hunter by trade, 26 years old with a reputation for bringing his quarry in alive whenever possible, and for never giving up once he took a job. The marshal in Casa Grande had hired him after the Garretts robbed a bank and killed a teller, but when Nathan had stopped in Coolidge to water his horse and ask questions, he had learned about the missing schoolteacher, the woman at the general store, a Mrs. Patterson with silver hair and fierce eyes, had grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "Miss Brennan is a good girl. She did not deserve this. Those animals took her in broad daylight." Nathan had seen the fear and anger in the faces of the townspeople, had heard the way the children asked when their teacher would return. Something had shifted in his chest, a pull he could not quite name. This was not just about the bounty anymore. This was about a woman who had clearly touched lives, who mattered to people, who deserved better than to be forgotten in the desert. But Nathan Irving did not ride alone. His companion was a tracking dog named Bear, a massive bloodhound with drooping ears and a nose that could follow a trail 3 weeks old. Nathan had raised Bear from a puppy, and the dog had saved his life more times than he could count. Beyond Bear, Nathan had sent word to his closest friend, a man named Samuel. Sam, Cooper, who had ridden with him during their time as Army scouts before they both decided civilian life suited them better. Sam met him at the base of the Picacho Mountains, where Nathan had tracked the Garretts to a network of old mining claims that honeycombed the rocky hills. Sam was a lean man with dark hair and darker eyes, part Mexican on his mother's side, and he could move through rough country like smoke through air. "You are sure she is alive?" Sam asked, checking his rifle. "The trail is fresh." "They are keeping her somewhere they can watch, somewhere they think no one will find." Nathan studied the mountains, noting the places where old trails wound up into the rocks. "Bear caught her scent near the stage road. We are close." Sam nodded. "You know they will not give her up easy." "I am not asking for easy. I am asking for smart." Nathan's jaw tightened. "We get her out alive. That is all that matters." They waited until dusk, when the desert heat finally broke and the shadows grew long. Bear led them up a narrow trail to where a thin stream of smoke rose from behind a jumble of boulders. Nathan spotted the camp easily, 3 men sitting around a fire, passing a bottle between them. No sign of the woman. He signaled to Sam, and they split up, circling around to opposite sides of the camp. Nathan moved with the patience of a man who understood that haste got people killed. He could hear the Garretts talking, their voices carrying in the still evening air. "We should just cut our losses," the youngest one said. "Pete, leave her and ride for Mexico tonight. And give up a perfectly good opportunity." That was Charlie's voice, edged with cruelty. "I know some men in Nogales who would pay well." "Pretty thing like that, with that red hair and those green eyes." Nathan's hands tightened on his rifle. He had known men like Charlie Garrett before, men who saw people as property, who thrived on causing pain. The world would not miss him. Frank's voice was quieter, harder to hear. "Something does not sit right. We have been here too long. Someone might be looking." "No one is looking," Charlie scoffed. "Her daddy does not want her, and that little dirt town does not have the resources to mount a search. We are golden." Nathan caught Sam's eye across the camp and gave the signal. He stepped out from behind the rocks with his rifle leveled, Bear at his side growling low and dangerous. "United States Marshal business. Put your hands where I can see them." The lie came easily. Nathan wore no badge, but in the fading light and with Sam emerging from the other side with his own rifle raised, the Garretts did not question it. Charlie went for his gun anyway, because men like him always did. Nathan shot the weapon out of his hand, the crack of the rifle echoing off the rocks. Charlie howled, clutching his bleeding fingers. "Next one goes through your chest," Nathan said, his voice flat and cold. "Where is the woman?" Frank and Pete raised their hands, but Charlie, even wounded, sneered. "You are too late. She is dead. We got tired of waiting." Nathan's heart lurched, but Bear was already pulling at his leash, nose to the ground, heading toward what looked like a collapsed mine entrance. The dog would not be pulling if there was only a corpse ahead. "Sam, keep them covered. If they twitch wrong, shoot them." Sam nodded, his rifle never wavering. Nathan followed Bear to the mine entrance, where a rope ladder descended into darkness. He could hear something, a faint sound that might have been breathing or might have been the wind moving through stone passages. "Miss Brennan," he called down. "My name is Nathan Irving. I am here to get you out." For a long moment there was only silence, then a voice, rough and strained but alive. "Is this real?" "Yes, madam. Can you climb if I send down a light?" "I do not know. My hands are tied. I cannot feel them anymore." Nathan cursed under his breath. "I am coming down. Do not be afraid." He lit a lantern and descended into the mine shaft, the ladder creaking under his weight. The air was cool and dank, smelling of earth and stone. At the bottom, his lantern light fell on a woman huddled against the rock wall, her dress torn and filthy, her red hair matted with dirt. But her eyes, those green eyes Charlie had mentioned, burned with defiance even in her exhaustion. "You are real," she whispered. "I am real." Nathan knelt beside her, setting down the lantern to pull his knife. "I am going to cut the ropes. This might hurt when the blood flows back. I do not care. Just get me out of here." He sawed through the ropes as gently as he could, but Molly could not suppress a gasp of pain as her hands came free and sensation began to return in agonizing waves. Nathan steadied her, his hands warm and solid on her shoulders. "Can you stand?" "I can try." She managed to get to her feet, though her legs trembled and threatened to give out. Nathan kept one arm around her waist, supporting her weight. "We need to get you up this ladder. Can you hold on to me?" Molly looked at the rope ladder, then at this stranger who had descended into hell to pull her out. He had a strong face, weathered by sun and wind, with blue eyes that held both determination and surprising gentleness. "I can hold on." Getting Molly up the ladder was a slow, painful process. Nathan went up first, then reached down to haul her up step by step, while she clung to the rope with hands that screamed in protest. When they finally emerged into the cool evening air, Molly collapsed onto solid ground and simply breathed, great gulping breaths of freedom. Sam had the Garrett brothers on their knees, their hands tied with their own ropes. Charlie was still cursing and bleeding. Pete looked like he might be sick. Frank just stared at the ground. "The lady lives, I see," Sam said. "These men were just telling me about all their crimes." Very talkative when properly motivated, Nathan helped Molly to her feet. "Can you ride?" "I will crawl to Coolidge if I have to." He smiled then, a quick flash of warmth that transformed his serious face. "I have a horse. You will ride with me." The journey back to Coolidge took most of the night. Nathan rode with Molly seated in front of him, her back against his chest, his arms on either side of her as he held the reins. She drifted in and out of sleep, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion now that she was safe. Sam rode ahead with the Garrett brothers tied to their horses, Bear loping alongside. Molly woke as the sun began to pink the eastern sky, painting the desert in shades of rose and gold. She could feel Nathan's heartbeat steady against her back, feel the warmth of him surrounding her. "Why did you come for me?" she asked quietly. Nathan was silent for a moment. "The people in Coolidge spoke of you. They said you were a good teacher, that the children loved you. They said you came from Boston to make a difference. My father said I was a fool." "Your father does not know what matters." Molly turned her head slightly, trying to see his face. "You do not even know me. I know you are brave. I know you did not break even when they told you no one was coming. I know you matter to people." His voice dropped lower. "That is enough." Something warm and fragile unfurled in Molly's chest. She had spent so long feeling unwanted, first by her father and then by the men who saw her only as a commodity. But this stranger had ridden into danger for her, had brought his friend and his dog, had descended into darkness to pull her back into light. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for not giving up." Nathan's arms tightened slightly around her, a gesture of protection and something more. "I do not give up. Not on jobs and not on people who deserve better." They rode into Coolidge as the town was waking. Mrs. Patterson was sweeping the porch of the general store when she looked up and saw them. Her broom clattered to the ground, and she let out a cry that brought people running from every direction. "Miss Brennan." "Oh, sweet mercy, Miss Brennan." Within moments, Molly found herself surrounded by townspeople, all talking at once, hands reaching to touch her as if to confirm she was real. The children from her school pushed through the crowd, calling her name. Nathan helped her down from the horse, keeping a steadying hand on her elbow as the crowd pressed close. The town doctor, a stout man named Dr. Harrison, pushed through the throng. "Give her space, all of you." Miss Brennan needs medical attention and rest." But before Molly could be led away, she turned back to Nathan. He was already organizing with Sam to take the Garrett brothers to the marshal's office, all business and efficiency. She caught his hand, stopping him. "Will you stay? In town, I mean." At least for a few days. Nathan looked down at their joined hands, then up at her face. Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the professional facade. "I will stay." The next 3 days passed in a blur of recovery. Dr. Harrison treated the rope burns on Molly's wrists, gave her salves for the cuts and bruises, and prescribed rest and good food. Mrs. Patterson installed Molly in her own home, refusing to let her return to the small room above the general store until she was stronger. The townspeople brought casseroles and pies, flowers and well wishes. The children made her cards decorated with careful drawings. Nathan stayed at the boarding house down the street, but he visited every day. At first, it was just to check on her recovery, to make sure she had everything she needed. But as Molly grew stronger, their conversations lengthened. They would sit on Mrs. Patterson's porch in the evening, watching the sun set over the desert, and talk about everything and nothing. Molly learned that Nathan had grown up in Missouri, the son of a saddle maker who had died when Nathan was 15. He had joined the Army at 17, served 5 years as a scout, and then struck out on his own as a bounty hunter. He had no family left, no place he called home. "I just drift," he said one evening, his voice quiet. "Go where the work takes me." "That sounds lonely," Molly said. Nathan shrugged. "It is what I know. It does not have to be all you know." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Molly felt her breath catch. There was something in his eyes, a hunger and a hesitation all at once. "You should not say things like that to me," he said softly. "Why not?" "Because I might start believing you mean them." Molly reached over and took his hand, threading her fingers through his. "I mean them." Nathan's thumb brushed over her knuckles, careful of the healing wounds there. "You have been through something terrible. You might feel grateful now, but that is not the same as actually wanting me around." Nathan Irving, I am 22 years old and I crossed half a country to escape a life I did not want. I am not a child, and I am not confused. She squeezed his hand. "I see you. I see your kindness and your courage and the way you looked at me in that mine shaft like I was someone worth saving. I want to know you better. I want to know if what I am feeling might turn into something real." He stared at her for a long moment, and then he did something that made her heart soar. He smiled, a real smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes and softened every hard line of his face. "I would like that too," he said. "More than you know." The next weeks unfolded with the gentle inevitability of a desert flower blooming after rain. Nathan took jobs in the area, refusing anything that would take him more than a day's ride from Coolidge. Sam stayed too, claiming the town needed a decent tracker, but Molly suspected it had more to do with the blacksmith's pretty daughter who had caught his eye. Molly returned to teaching, and Nathan would often stop by the schoolhouse in the afternoon to walk her home. The children adored him, especially when he brought Bear, who bore their enthusiastic attention with patient dignity. In the evenings, Nathan and Molly would take long walks into the desert, where he taught her to identify animal tracks, and she taught him about the constellations she had learned from books. They talked about everything. Nathan shared stories from his time in the Army, the beauty and brutality of the frontier, the men he had served with, and the ones he had hunted. Molly told him about growing up in Boston society, the suffocating expectations, her mother's death when she was 16, and her father's increasing coldness. She told him about the moment she had decided to leave, packing her bags in the dead of night and boarding a train west with money she had saved from her small allowance. "I wanted to matter," she said one evening as they sat on a flat rock watching the stars emerge. "I wanted to do something that made a difference, not just sit in a parlor and be decorative." "You matter," Nathan said firmly. "Those children in your school, they are learning because of you. They have a future because of you. My father would say I am wasting my education." "Your father is a fool." Molly laughed, leaning against Nathan's shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her and they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the coyotes sing in the distance. 2 months after her rescue, Nathan kissed her for the first time. They were at the summer social, a town gathering with music and dancing and long tables laden with food. Molly had been talking with Mrs. Patterson when Nathan appeared at her elbow, looking uncomfortable in a clean shirt and nervous as a colt. "Would you dance with me?" he asked. Molly's smile was radiant. "I thought you would never ask." He was not a graceful dancer, but he held her gently and tried his best to follow the music. When the song ended, they drifted away from the crowd, walking toward the church where paper lanterns swayed in the evening breeze. "I am not good with words," Nathan said, stopping beneath one of the lanterns. "I am better with action, but I need you to know that these past weeks, getting to know you, they have been the best of my life." Molly's heart was pounding. "Nathan, I am falling in love with you, Molly Brennan." "I think I started falling the moment I heard about a schoolteacher who chose the frontier over comfort, who fought to build something good in a hard place." He cupped her face in his calloused hands. "I do not have much to offer. I am a bounty hunter who lives out of saddlebags. But if you will have me, I want to try. I want to stay here in Coolidge. I want to build a life with you." Molly's eyes filled with tears, but they were happy tears. "I am falling in love with you too. I love your honor and your strength and the way you see the good in people. I love that you came for me when no one else did. I love that you stayed." Nathan's smile was tender and wondering. "Can I kiss you, please?" He kissed her softly at first, a gentle brush of lips that made her toes curl in her boots, then deeper, with all the pent-up longing of the past weeks. Molly's arms went around his neck and she kissed him back with everything in her heart. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," Molly laughed, dizzy with joy. "That was quick. I do not see the point in waiting. I know what I want." He pulled back to look into her eyes. "But if you need time." "I do not need time. Yes, Nathan Irving, I will marry you." They were married 6 weeks later in the small church in Coolidge with the entire town in attendance. Sam stood as Nathan's best man and Mrs. Patterson dabbed at her eyes throughout the ceremony. The children from Molly's school threw wildflowers, and Bear wore a ribbon around his neck. Nathan had spent the weeks before the wedding building a house on the edge of town, a simple adobe structure with a wide porch and enough rooms for a family. Sam helped, and so did many of the townsmen, grateful to Nathan for bringing their teacher home. It was not fancy, but it was solid and filled with light. Their wedding night was tender and sweet. Nathan carried Molly over the threshold, then set her down gently in the main room. Someone had filled the house with candles, and their light flickered warm and golden on the whitewashed walls. "Are you nervous?" Nathan asked, brushing a strand of red hair back from her face. "A little," Molly admitted. "But happy, so very happy. We will go slow. We have all the time in the world." They undressed each other carefully, Nathan's hands reverent on her skin. He kissed every scar left by the ropes on her wrists, kissed the fading bruises, kissed her until she was breathless and aching. When they finally came together, it was with gentleness and passion intertwined. Two people who had found something precious and rare. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, Molly's head on Nathan's chest, his fingers trailing through her hair. "I never thought I would have this," Nathan said quietly. "A home, a wife, someone who sees me as more than just a gun for hire." Molly tilted her head up to kiss his jaw. "You are so much more. You are everything." Life settled into a rhythm that felt like contentment made manifest. Nathan gave up bounty hunting and took a job as a deputy sheriff, working to keep the peace in Coolidge and the surrounding area. Molly continued teaching, her schoolhouse growing as more families moved to the region. Sam married the blacksmith's daughter in a rowdy celebration that lasted 2 days, and he and Nathan went into business together, offering tracking and security services to ranchers troubled by rustlers. In the evenings, Nathan and Molly would sit on their porch and watch the sun paint the desert in impossible colors. They would talk about their days, share their dreams, and sometimes just sit in comfortable silence, hands intertwined. A year into their marriage, Molly discovered she was pregnant. She told Nathan over breakfast one morning, watching his face carefully for his reaction. He went very still, his coffee cup halfway to his mouth. "Are you sure?" "Dr. Harrison confirmed it yesterday. I am almost 3 months along." Nathan set down his cup carefully, then came around the table to kneel in front of her chair. He placed his hands on her still flat belly, his expression a mixture of awe and terror. "I do not know how to be a father," he said hoarsely. "I do not know if I will be any good at it." Molly covered his hands with hers. "You will be wonderful. You are patient and kind and strong. Our child will be lucky to have you." "Our child," Nathan repeated, testing the words. Then his face split into a grin so wide it made Molly laugh. "We are having a baby. We are having a baby." He kissed her then, deep and long, and Molly could taste his joy and his love. When they broke apart, Nathan rested his cheek against her belly. "I will protect you both," he promised. "With everything I have, I will keep you safe." Their son was born on a crisp October morning in 1885, arriving in a rush after a labor that lasted only 6 hours. Dr. Harrison handed the squalling infant to Nathan while he tended to Molly, and Nathan stared down at the tiny red face in absolute wonder. "He is perfect," Nathan breathed. "Molly, he is perfect." From the bed, exhausted but radiant, Molly smiled. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months but never quite decided. Nathan looked down at his son, this tiny person who held his finger in a surprisingly strong grip, and suddenly knew. "Thomas. Thomas James Irving, after my father and yours." Molly's eyes filled with tears. Her father had not responded to the letter she had sent announcing her marriage, but naming their son after him was a gesture of forgiveness, of letting go of old hurts. "Thomas James Irving," she repeated. "It is perfect." Being a father transformed Nathan in ways he never expected. He was gentle with Thomas, patient through the sleepless nights and endless diaper changes. He would walk the floor for hours when the baby was fussy, singing old army marching songs in his rough voice until Thomas settled. Molly would watch them from the doorway and feel her heart expand with love. As Thomas grew from an infant to a toddler, he clearly adored his father. His first word was "da," and his first steps were taken in a rush to reach Nathan coming home from work. Nathan taught him to whistle, to recognize animal sounds, and to be gentle with Bear, who bore the toddler's enthusiastic attention with the patience of a saint. Molly returned to teaching part-time, bringing Thomas with her to the schoolhouse. The older children adored him, and having a baby in the classroom taught them responsibility and gentleness. The town of Coolidge had become a true community, growing and prospering. New businesses opened, families put down roots, and the sense of lawlessness that had once plagued the area faded as Nathan and the other lawmen established order. On their 3rd anniversary, Nathan surprised Molly with a trip to Tucson. Sam and his wife agreed to watch Thomas for the weekend, and Nathan and Molly rode out in a rented buggy, feeling young and free. They stayed in a real hotel, with a brass bed and wallpaper and a restaurant downstairs. They walked through the town, browsing shops and marveling at the new technologies arriving in Arizona. Nathan bought Molly a necklace with a small emerald pendant. "The stone matches your eyes," he said as he fastened it around her neck. "I wanted you to have something beautiful, something that lasts." Molly turned in his arms, her hands resting on his chest. "I already have something that lasts. I have you, I have Thomas, I have the life we built together." Nathan kissed her temple. "Do you ever regret it? Leaving Boston, coming out here. Your life could have been so much easier." "Easier is not better. I do not regret a single moment." She pulled back to look into his eyes. "Nathan, you saved my life in that mine shaft, but you did more than that. You gave me a reason to live. You gave me love and purpose and a family. How could I possibly regret that?" That night, in their hotel room, they made love with the slow intensity of two people who knew each other's bodies intimately, who had learned over 3 years how to give and receive pleasure. Afterward, wrapped in Nathan's arms, Molly told him she suspected she was pregnant again. "Already?" Nathan said, surprised but pleased. "Are you certain?" "Not yet, but I feel the same as I did with Thomas." Nathan's hand splayed protectively over her belly. "Then we will prepare for another blessing." Their daughter was born the following spring, in April of 1887, with hair as red as her mother's and eyes that turned the same bright blue as her father's. They named her Sarah Elizabeth Irving, and she arrived with a lusty cry that announced her personality. Where Thomas had been an easy baby, Sarah was demanding, strong-willed, and full of energy. "She is your daughter," Nathan said one night after walking her for an hour trying to get her to sleep. But he was smiling, clearly besotted. "She is our daughter," Molly corrected, "and she is perfect." Life with 2 children was chaotic and exhausting and filled with more love than Molly had ever imagined possible. Thomas, at 2 years old, was fascinated by his baby sister, always wanting to help to hold her, to show her his toys. Nathan divided his time between work and family with careful deliberation, never wanting his children to feel he was absent. On Sundays, they would pack a picnic and ride out to the Gila River, where Thomas would splash in the shallows and Sarah would sleep in a basket in the shade. Bear would lie nearby, keeping watch, and Nathan and Molly would steal kisses when the children were not looking. "This is everything I never knew I wanted," Nathan said one afternoon, watching Thomas try to catch minnows in his small hands. "When I was younger, I thought I would always be alone. I thought people like me did not get happy endings." Molly leaned against his shoulder. "You deserved a happy ending more than anyone I have ever known. You are a good man, Nathan Irving, the best man I know." He turned to kiss her, soft and sweet. "I love you, Molly, more every day. I love you too, always." The years unfolded like pages in a book, each one bringing new joys and challenges. Thomas started school with his mother as his teacher, and he was bright and eager to learn. Sarah grew into a whirlwind of a girl, fearless and wild, always climbing trees and catching lizards and demanding to go everywhere her father went. They had another child, a son they named William, when Sarah was 3 and Thomas was 5. William was quiet and thoughtful, content to sit and watch the world with solemn eyes. Nathan's work as deputy sheriff kept him busy but rarely dangerous. The wildness of the early frontier was fading, replaced by law and order and the steady march of civilization. When the railroad finally reached Coolidge in 1890, it brought prosperity and growth, and the little town expanded into something more substantial. Molly eventually became the head teacher of a proper school building, with 3 classrooms and multiple teachers. She loved her work, loved seeing children grow and learn, loved being part of the community that had taken her in and made her one of their own. Sam and his wife had children too, 4 in total, and the two families were intertwined. Sunday dinners often included both households, with children running wild and adults lingering over coffee and conversation. Bear grew old gracefully, eventually passing away when he was 14, mourned by the entire Irving family. Nathan got another dog, a young bloodhound he named Scout, who followed in Bear's noble pawprints. On their 10th anniversary, Nathan took Molly back to the spot where he had first kissed her, beneath the paper lanterns at the church. The town had changed around them, grown bigger and busier, but this spot remained the same. 10 years, Nathan said, holding both her hands in his. 10 years since you said yes to a drifter with nothing to offer but his heart. Molly smiled, her face still beautiful despite the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the touch of silver in her red hair. You had everything to offer. You just did not know it yet. You made me believe I could be more than what I was. You made me believe in home and family and futures that lasted longer than the next bounty. He pulled her close, swaying to music only they could hear. Thank you, Molly. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for building this life with me. Thank you for coming for me when no one else would, Molly whispered. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for every day since. They kissed beneath those lanterns just as they had 10 years before, and the love between them was deeper and richer for all they had weathered together. More years passed in the comfortable rhythm of a life well lived. Thomas grew tall and serious, eventually studying law with the aim of becoming a judge. Sarah, true to form, declared she wanted to be a doctor and began apprenticing with Dr. Harrison, who was delighted to finally have someone interested in taking over his practice. William discovered a talent for drawing and painting, capturing the stark beauty of the desert in ways that made people stop and stare. Nathan's hair turned gray at the temples, and his hands grew weathered from years of work, but he was still strong and capable. He eventually became sheriff when the old sheriff retired, a position he held with the same integrity he had brought to everything else in his life. Molly's schoolhouse became legendary in the region, known for turning out educated, thoughtful young people. She wrote textbooks for frontier schools, drawing on her years of experience teaching in difficult conditions. Her father, in his final years, had reached out with a letter that was part apology, part plea for reconciliation. Molly had written back, offering forgiveness but making it clear that her life was in Arizona now, with her family and her work. She had enclosed a photograph of Nathan and the children. Her father had died 6 months later, leaving her a substantial inheritance that she used to build a library in Coolidge. On a warm evening in 1899, 15 years after Nathan had pulled Molly from that mine shaft, they sat on their porch watching the sunset. Their children were grown or nearly so. Thomas was away at law school in California. Sarah was in medical school in Philadelphia. William, at 12, was inside working on a painting of the desert in autumn. "Do you ever think about that day?" Molly asked, her head on Nathan's shoulder. "The day you found me?" "Sometimes," Nathan admitted. "I think about how close I came to not going to Coolidge at all. I almost rode straight to Casa Grande if I had not stopped to ask questions." "But you did stop. You did ask. You came for me." Molly lifted her head to look at him. "Do you believe in fate?" Nathan considered the question. "I believe in choices. I believe that every day we choose what kind of people we want to be, what kind of life we want to live. I chose to come for you. I chose to stay. And every day since, I have chosen to love you." "And I have chosen to love you," Molly said softly. "Best choice I ever made." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and pink. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. Inside the house, they could hear William humming as he worked. The evening air smelled of desert sage and the roses Molly had coaxed into blooming in their garden. "I am happy," Nathan said suddenly. "Completely, utterly happy. I just wanted you to know that." Molly smiled, squeezing his hand. "I am happy too. We built something good here, Nathan, something that lasts, because of you, because you believed in me when I did not believe in myself." "No," Molly corrected gently, "because of us, because we built it together." The years continued to pass, bringing the turn of the century and all the changes it entailed. The Wild West they had known was fading into legend, replaced by telephones and automobiles and electric lights. Arizona moved toward statehood, and Nathan served on committees helping to shape the laws and structures of the future state. Thomas became a judge at 30, known for his fairness and wisdom. Sarah opened a medical practice in Tucson, one of the first female doctors in the territory, and her waiting room was always full. William's paintings hung in galleries in San Francisco and New York, celebrated for their raw beauty. All three children married and started families of their own, giving Nathan and Molly 8 grandchildren to spoil and adore. On their 30th anniversary, the entire family gathered in Coolidge for a celebration. The town threw a party in their honor, recognizing the contributions Nathan and Molly had made to the community. There were speeches and toasts, music and dancing. Mrs. Patterson, now ancient but still fierce, gave a speech about how Molly's rescue and the love story that followed had given the whole town hope. "They showed us what courage looks like," Mrs. Patterson said, her voice still strong. "What love looks like, what building a life looks like." Nathan Irving rode into hell to bring Molly Brennan home, and she had the courage to build a future with a man who refused to give up on her. They are an inspiration to us all. Nathan stood and helped Molly to her feet, and the room erupted in applause. Molly looked around at all the faces, the people who had become family, the community that had embraced her. She looked at her children and their spouses and the grandchildren chasing each other between tables. She looked at Nathan, whose blue eyes still made her heart skip a beat. "I love you," she mouthed to him over the applause. "I love you more," he mouthed back, and they both laughed at the old argument. That night, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Nathan and Molly took one last walk through the town. Coolidge had grown into a proper city, with paved streets and streetlights and buildings made of brick and stone. But the desert still pressed close, reminding everyone that civilization was a thin veneer over something wild and ancient. They walked to the edge of town, where their original house still stood, now used as a guest house for visiting grandchildren. They sat on the porch, just as they had done thousands of times before. 30 years, Molly said wonderingly. Where did the time go? "Into building this," Nathan said, gesturing at the town, at their life. "Into raising our children and loving each other and making something that matters." "You have any regrets?" Nathan thought about it seriously before answering. "I regret that I did not find you sooner. That we did not have more time. We have had 30 years, we still have more ahead of us. I know, but it will never be enough. I will never have enough time with you." Molly leaned against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the warmth of his body. "Then we make every moment count. We love as hard as we can for as long as we can. That is all anyone can do." Nathan wrapped his arms around her and held on tight. "You made me believe in forever, Molly Irving. You made me believe in happy endings." "We made them together," Molly whispered. "Every single day we chose each other. We chose love. That is what made it real." They sat there under the stars, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life and a family and a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. The desert wind whispered around them, carrying the scent of sage and sand. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called, and Nathan and Molly held each other close, grateful for every moment, every choice, every day that had led them here. The years that followed were gentle ones. Nathan and Molly grew old together with grace, their love deepening rather than fading. Nathan eventually retired from being sheriff, passing the badge to a younger man but still serving as an advisor. Molly retired from teaching at 65, though she continued to tutor children who struggled with reading. They spent their days in quiet contentment, tending their garden, playing with grandchildren, and taking slow walks through the town they had helped build. Their children visited often, and the house was filled with laughter and life. Nathan's health began to fail when he was 72, his heart growing weaker. He bore it with typical stoicism, refusing to complain even when Molly knew he was in pain. Sarah, now a respected doctor, visited often to check on him, but they all knew there was nothing to be done but make him comfortable and cherish the time they had left. On a spring morning in 1916, when the desert was carpeted with wildflowers and the air was soft and sweet, Nathan woke to find Molly watching him from her side of the bed. "Good morning, beautiful," he said, his voice rough but warm. "Good morning, my love," Molly replied, reaching over to take his hand. They lay there for a long moment, just looking at each other, saying everything that needed to be said without words. "I am not afraid," Nathan said finally. "I have had a good life, the best life, because of you." Molly's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. "I am not ready to let you go. I know. I am not ready to leave you, but Molly, if I have to go, I am going knowing that I was loved, truly, deeply loved. That is more than most people ever get." "You were loved," Molly said fiercely. "You are loved. By me, by our children, by our grandchildren, by this entire town. You are loved, Nathan Irving." He squeezed her hand weakly. "Will you be all right, eventually? Because you taught me to be strong. Because you gave me a family and a community and a lifetime of love to sustain me." She leaned over to kiss him gently. "But I will miss you every day for the rest of my life." "I will be waiting for you," Nathan whispered. "Wherever comes next, I will be there, waiting. And when you arrive, I will be the first one to greet you. Promise." "I promise." Nathan died that afternoon, surrounded by his family, with Molly holding his hand and whispering that she loved him. He slipped away peacefully, a faint smile on his weathered face. The town of Coolidge mourned deeply. Nathan's funeral was attended by hundreds of people whose lives he had touched. There were lawmen he had trained, children he had protected, families he had helped. The church overflowed, and people stood outside in the spring sunshine, sharing stories of his kindness and his courage. Molly stood at his grave and thought about the day a cowboy had descended into a dark mine shaft to pull her into light. She thought about every day since, every laugh and kiss and ordinary moment that had made up their extraordinary life together. She had been saved by Nathan Irving, but more than that, she had been loved by him, and that love had transformed everything. She lived another 8 years, staying active and engaged in the community. She saw her grandchildren graduate from schools and start their own careers. She held great-grandchildren in her arms and marveled at how her life had expanded from one desperate woman in a mine shaft to this vast network of love and family. She missed Nathan every single day, but she lived well, honoring the life they had built together. She told their story often, to grandchildren who sat wide-eyed at the tale of rescue and romance, of choosing love in a hard land. When Molly Brennan Irving died in her sleep in 1924 at the age of 72, she was laid to rest beside Nathan under a cottonwood tree in the Coolidge Cemetery. The headstone was simple, bearing both their names and a single line. They chose each other. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren gathered to remember a love story that had begun with a rescue and had lasted beyond death. They remembered how Nathan had come for Molly when no one else would, how he had brought his friend and his dog and his unwavering determination. They remembered how Molly had chosen to build a life with a bounty hunter who became so much more. They remembered the house on the edge of town, the porch where their grandparents sat every evening, the way Nathan and Molly would hold hands even after 50 years of marriage. The Wild West they had known was long gone, replaced by paved roads and modern conveniences and the steady march of the 20th century. But the legacy of Nathan and Molly Irving endured. Their children and grandchildren carried forward the values they had instilled: courage and kindness, loyalty and love, the importance of community, and standing up for what is right. In Coolidge, Arizona, people still told the story of the schoolteacher and the cowboy, the rescue and the romance that followed. It became legend, passed down through generations, a reminder that love could flourish even in the hardest places, that choosing each other every day mattered more than grand gestures, that happy endings were real if you were brave enough to reach for them. And somewhere beyond the veil of death, in whatever came next, Nathan Irving kept his promise. He waited for Molly with open arms and that smile that had always made her heart skip, ready to begin their next adventure together, hand in hand, as they always had been. Their story ended, but the love they had built endured, woven into the fabric of the town they had helped create, living on in the descendants who carried their blood and their values forward. The cowboy had come for her when no one else would, and together they had created something that would never truly die. A legacy of love that transcended time and touched countless lives. In the end, that was what mattered most. Not the danger or the rescue, not the hardships they had overcome or the years they had lived. What mattered was the choice to love fiercely and completely, to build something good together, to leave the world better than they found it. Nathan and Molly Irving had done all that and more, and their happily ever after was carved into the very heart of the American West, eternal and true.